our founder and president of Friends Cafe Club of Canada, Khurram Tawheed from Calgary, and our today's presenter and trainer, Josefa from Vancouver. So I would first like to thank you, Friends Cafe Club of Canada, on behalf of everyone for organizing this event, and would like to ask Khurram Tawheed to share with us a brief introduction about Friends Cafe organization and groups. Thank you.
So thank you, MA and Muhammad Ali Khan, and also thanks to Zephyr, who is our programs instructor today. First of all, on behalf of Friends Cafe Club of Canada, I would like to thank all the participants who is joining today's sessions. It's all about the LinkedIn and power of LinkedIn tool, especially when you are looking for jobs. So Friends Cafe Club of Canada itself is a registered club, and we do have our registered body. We do conduct a lot of professional events here in Canada and even in Pakistan and other countries as well. Even we have a program yesterday as well that was for the students in Pakistan. So, and this program, today's workshop is part of that and the continuation of that professional series we have started almost a year ago. So without wasting, anybody's time, I know it's a fasting time. So I'm going to ask Josefa, please introduce yourself and start this session. Thanks. And on behalf of Friends Cafe, I would also like to thank Zafar, who is providing the backend support in this program. So over to you, Josefa.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes, I will just share my screen. And...
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can share your screen.
Okay. So my name is Mohammed Uzefa. I'm doing a master's here in UBC, Vancouver. I'm part of the Friends Cafe Vancouver group. Thanks in advance for all of the people here who helped set it up, including Khurram Bhai, Zafar Bhai, Ali Bhai. And so I worked 3 years in the Middle East, UAE, for an oil and gas consultancy firm. It's very hard to get a job in UAE, and of course, a lot of people here are struggling as well. So this is just an idea if it could help people to try and search for jobs, but also know what features LinkedIn offers. Just to check, my screen's visible, right?
Yep.
Okay. To start off with, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The first thing to note is for any venture that we do, we must know there is no might or power except by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means that getting a job, the thing that is in our hands is just the effort to try. And that's what this
recording in progress.
This short PowerPoint will focus on, is to try and help us put our effort in the right direction. But the ultimate result, which is the job section, getting the job is on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give that job. But let's try our best in terms of using LinkedIn passively and actively to hunt for those job opportunities. We'll also look at what recruiters see from a LinkedIn perspective and how we can optimize our LinkedIn profile so that we appear in the top pages of their search results. And finally, we'll end with a quick summary. And if any of you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or hold on to them till the end of the session. So to start off with, if there's students on this call or people who are working, I mean, this applies to everybody. When we try to look for opportunities, we're either connecting with people who know those opportunities or we're trying to apply for those jobs ourselves. And so traditionally, we probably do this by attending career fairs, looking at social groups where either on Facebook or people we've met or friends from our school or universities, like those kind of meetups where we can try and network our way around those opportunities. LinkedIn is just one tool that helps you create that online version of this. So it's just a supplement. It's not a substitute for your traditional approaches. And so that's one thing very important to note is please do not stop the other avenues of approach to job hunting, which is namely attending these career fairs and networking physically, but also use LinkedIn to try and help you maintain those relationships in a soft form, but also gives you access to this online market. And so the very first thing we need to do is make sure that we have a LinkedIn profile created. Now, for the purposes of this session, it's too short to actually go about that. So I've just highlighted a couple of things that you can do to get a jump start on that. So instead of creating it from scratch, which a lot of us probably suffered through, there is perhaps another smarter way to do it is instead of reinventing the whole part of creating it, you can just pick a nice template profile of somebody who's invested a lot of effort into it already and get inspiration from there to model your own LinkedIn profile page. And so that's the first task, to create the profile, but also use good examples, relevant examples to try and help you, speed up that process. And so what this looks like is, let's say you're an industry professional or a student trying to get into the industry. The first thing you can do is use the search bar on LinkedIn to search for people, or if you know them by name, or even the company that they work for, and try and access their profiles. And this is what would probably come up if you're accessing it using a PC or a laptop. And the three things that you must, or four things that you must look out for when trying to choose a template profile as a source of inspiration is, first, that profile must have a cover photo. So that's the background image. It must have a professional profile photo. So it's like persons in a suit, etc. Clean, clear, professional background photo and profile photo. The second is they must, and so underneath the name is an area what they call the headline. This headline is key because if you look at any person's profile on LinkedIn, the three things that you see are their profile picture, their name, and their headline. So to the right of this picture, you can see people also viewed Maisa and Mohammed Hamza, and you can see clearly that they have a profile photo and they also have a headline. So Maisa apparently is a process engineer, and Mohammed Hamza is doing a degree in civil engineering. And so they must have a headline. The third thing is, if anybody has invested time into optimizing their LinkedIn profile, a quick way to tell is if they've updated their URL or the link to their LinkedIn profile. And so if you notice that the person, so up top on the URL bar, there's a clean URL. So it says linkedin.com/in/m Huzaifa. If you created a profile and you didn't update your URL to something like this, it would just give you your name plus a random set of numbers. And that gives a bad impression. So if anybody's really taking care of their profile, they probably have already updated the URL. And the last thing is they should have a couple of sections within their LinkedIn profile. So again, 4 things to make sure when you're trying to choose a template source of inspiration kind of profile for is they must have a cover photo, a profile photo, a nice, maybe catchy headline. They must have had a clean URL, and then of course a couple of sections. So a few examples here. This is Virginia. She has an awesome profile, in my opinion, at least. She's invested time into editing that URL up there. It's a bit long, but that's probably because that's her website. The cover photo is clearly showing the relevance to who she is as a career professional. So she's offering services in customizing resumes. So that's what a cover photo kind of depicts. A clean, clear, professional photo, as well as a very nice headline. So headlines, I think, up to 120 characters. Feel free to use the keywords from your job description, the industry that you're headed into, fill it up here. This is the perfect place to put it in. And then as a quick second example of a business development person who's coaching people and teams. And so a very relevant profile picture again, background photo as well, tailored URL. And finally the headline. So these are some things that you should look for before templating or using that kind of LinkedIn profile to get ideas from. So now let's say you've chosen your template profile and you say, okay, this is the one that I'd like to kind of, model after. The second thing is you need to now tailor it to your own expertise. So that means you add your own headline. Of course, you basically make sure that you choose a professional picture. You update your URL, you add the sections. And so there's one thing in LinkedIn, it's like you can keep filling in the sections or you can choose to leave them blank. But I would highly recommend that you fill out all possible sections, because what LinkedIn does is it gives you an all-star status once most of your sections are filled up. And apparently, when recruiters search for your profiles, people who've had all-star status generally tend to appear higher up on their search results. And of course, when you're done with your profile, make sure that the most important information that you have is kind of like in the first few sections of your LinkedIn profile. It's kind of like your CV. The first page is the most important page where you put in the most important information. And for students, for example, you may not have a lot to fill up here. Feel free to use whatever experience you have in terms of extracurriculars, etc. But also in terms of career direction, instead of putting something like I'm a student here, you could say an aspiring sustainability professional, for example. It doesn't. It could just be your career direction. And so this is a quick look on the sections that come after your headline, your profile picture, etc. Now, these things I would highly recommend you have a go through to fill out. The first section is featured. This is standard. This always appears. This is only if you've pinned one of your posts to say, I want to feature this on my profile. And typically, a lot of people, I'll give you an example of this later. A lot of people will make sure that the posts that have the most likes or have very creative, original, humorous content maybe are featured up there. Because when somebody clicks on your profile, that's the first thing that comes up after they see your name and your headline. The next is the activity tab. So people can actually see what you're doing. There's a setting to try and make that private, but typically people can see how your likes, your comments, etc. And so this, I feel, is the most underestimated part of LinkedIn, because a lot of people who are job hunting just start using LinkedIn when they want to get a job. But that means that your activity section would be kind of blank for a while, or the main idea of using LinkedIn is networking. And the way to network is through LinkedIn is to engage with people. And the way to do that is through likes, shares, comments, posting stuff, getting into groups. And so that visibility part actually reflects directly on your activity. And so that's why it's a key piece of your profile. Make sure you keep engaged, regardless of if you're hunting for a job now or 2 months later. The about section is similar to your CV. You describe yourself, make sure you put in your experience and qualifications. Make sure you fill in keywords from the job description that you'd ideally apply for or you want to apply for. Experience section, please don't copy paste the stuff in the CV. Make sure it's a much more cleaned and crisp version of the CV, so straight to the point. And again, keywords from the job description must be throughout your LinkedIn profile, including in the experience section. Education for students, if you're graduating, maybe in a few months' time, please put in when you would be graduating. And if you have a GPA that's perhaps not deemed competitive, then maybe below 3.5, just ignore putting it on the profile. And if you have any extracurriculars, you can actually create a separate section in LinkedIn and label it as extracurriculars, etc. A couple of extra columns is like sections. If you have volunteering or courses or projects, honors and awards or languages you'd like to put in, feel free to. But don't miss out on skills and licenses, interests and recommendations as well. So skills, you have, I think, roughly up to 36 skills that you can put in LinkedIn, but you can only pin 3 of them to appear at the top of your profile. Now, what I would recommend is fill in the 36 skills according to your keywords in the job description and the experiences that you have, and make sure that you pin the ones that are most relevant to your degree or to your industry. And from the 3, make sure that one of them at least is a soft skill, so teamwork, team leadership, etc. And then 2 of them could be a technical skill. Because when somebody searches, a recruiter or whoever searches on LinkedIn, like let's say they're looking for a marketing manager, so they'll actually write that marketing manager. And if your skill said marketing manager, you would most likely appear in the top few results. Of course, there's an algorithm which we'll touch upon later, but make sure that you're filling in skills relevant to the job description as well. License and certifications, if you're a student, maybe you don't have a lot of this. So LinkedIn Learning is a great tool. I think they give you a free 1-month subscription trial as well. And if you have a professional certification, of course, this goes in here. Make sure that a lot of people recommend putting the credentials of your certification in front of your name so that people know immediately just by looking at your profile that, okay, this person has this certification. The interest section is something that LinkedIn will ask you to fill out. It's basically things that you'd, if you are interested in, would appear in your feed, your LinkedIn feed later on. Now, this is a prime example of how you could enhance your networking. So if you express interest or you choose those things that you're interested in, which are related to, let's say, a company page or a person that you're following, that you're interested to like working for or with. And this is the area that you should make sure that you filled out your interest section. And recommendations, I feel that it's like your references, and when you're applying for a job, you know, the recruiter might ask you, hey, we want to contact your old boss to see what they think of you. And so if you get a recommendation down in LinkedIn, it's, I think, almost as good as that. At least get 3 recommendations. A lot of profiles are missing recommendations, and this is kind of like a validation of your skills through somebody else, which holds a lot more weight usually. Because a lot of us are prone to perhaps maybe self-exaggeration, or people are not as willing to trust what we have on our profile sometimes. A quick example of what the feature section looks like, and about section. About is making sure, so feature section is making sure you have some stuff that really grabs attention, maybe the ones that, you know, have most likes on your post, etc. In terms of your about section, key figures, you know, quantifying what you're saying is very important. This goes for the CV as well. A quick example here, you know, forward-thinking strategist, worked with a team of 20, improved by 300% the portfolio. And similarly to the right, you know, 18 years experience, a couple of skills the person said that they have. So now that we've kind of very quickly gone through the LinkedIn profile, the second stuff is how we can actively start looking for the jobs. And there are a couple of things here, this outlined here, but we'll dive into them, which you can do to try and actively look for a job. The first thing is, when you start off at LinkedIn, you may not have a lot of, you know, friends in terms of connections. But when anybody does try to connect with you, you'll receive an invite. Now, a lot of people, if you don't know them, they may be uncomfortable accepting invites. But what I would say is accept most, if not all, of the invites you get. And this is because when you're trying to connect with somebody down the line that you really want to connect with, if they notice that you're a third-degree connection, third degree is like, you know, a friend of a friend is connected with you. Versus if you're a second-degree connection, that, you know, that person's friend you're connected with. You're not connected with him, but you're connected with somebody who's connected with him directly. So that's a second-degree connection. That actually holds much more weight in terms. Well, I feel that if I were to send a connection to somebody and they saw that, oh, maybe my friend circle knows this guy, that person might be more willing to accept your invite. That goes as the same with connection. So that's the second part. If you're sending a connection to somebody, make sure that you personalize it. There's an option to click on add note when you send in the request. If you've met the person, make sure that in that personalized request, you mention kind of the details of your meeting, how it went, or what you really liked. And if you didn't meet the person, you're trying to just cold connect through LinkedIn, you can look at their profile, pick out something that you really liked or something that they posted about. But one thing to be careful of is, instead of like sending 1,000 connections to 1,000 people relevant to your industry, LinkedIn tries to kind of limit that. So it's like, if a lot of people started ticking off saying, I don't know this person, you'd kind of get like a connection limiter, which is every time you try to connect with somebody and you click on the personalized invite button, it'll ask you to enter their email address. So you can send in a connection request, but you can't personalize it without knowing the email address. And when this happens, it just means that, you know, you just got to wait a little bit for that filter, the restriction to die out. I think it takes a few days, and then you can start again. But just make sure you're careful when you're sending those connections. Activity, we touched upon this earlier. Make sure that you're staying on top of people's mind. It's like fresh. So every time you do something, it comes in the feed. And so people, it's kind of like subconscious reinforcing that you exist. So make sure that you're active. LinkedIn algorithm posts. So it's like, at this point, let's say you're starting to post a lot and you really want to be known in your field or industry, or get known. There are a couple of 4 main criteria that LinkedIn uses, at least from what I know, which ranks your post in the order of it appears in the LinkedIn feed. So when somebody just goes into the feed, there might be 50 other posts before they reach yours, or yours might be the first one there. And the way they do this is quality. So are you just spamming this everywhere? You know, how valuable is your post? And this actually links with the next 3. So depending on how many likes you're getting, or shares or comments on your posts, so the engagement that you have in your post. But this takes time to build. So don't worry if you're not getting engagement. If you have a high quality content, it takes time, but you'll get traction. Credibility. So this is the trend of your posts. So, are they increasing in followers, likes, comments, shares, or are they decreasing, for example? And then finally, a human editor. So somebody will actually come in and vet your post and see, it's like, oh, this person's, okay, it's like authentic content, good to go. So that will help improve the ranking of your post in terms of when somebody clicks on the LinkedIn feed to see where that would appear. Follows, you can click on follow on people and on company pages. Feel free to connect with whoever you like. And if you don't want to connect with them, you just want to see what they're doing, you can click on follow. Search, I'll show you how to search up company pages. But basically you have a lot of filters in your search bar. So please use those to try and look at, who you'd like to connect with, where are they. It's kind of easy to find this in LinkedIn. If you don't know the person's name, it's fine. If you're looking for a position in a certain company, who's in that position, you can also do that through the search bar. Messaging connections. So a lot of times LinkedIn has this feature where you can turn on the notification of work anniversaries. So it's like if you got a promotion or you'd like to, it's been 1 year since you worked at a job, it might say it sends out this automatic thing to notify all your connections to say, oh, this person had, congratulations, this person worked for 1 year, etc. What I would recommend is not just liking that for that person. You go in and you message the person personally. So it's like there's a messaging feature in LinkedIn, and if you type it, it's like, hey, this sounds awesome that you did this, and I hope all the best for your next career steps, etc. That creates a stronger connection, and ultimately LinkedIn is all about trying to build that connection and connections. You can also use hashtags and mentions. Hashtags are very important because when people want to search for a particular theme, you can actually use a hashtag to search for that. And so if your posts have those, it will be more visible to the people who are, in that kind of field, perhaps, or who are trying to use that search filter for them. And you can also force people or companies to look at your post by mentioning them. Now, of course, be careful when you do this. Just be careful when you're trying to mention company pages. Try to be as professional as you can when using LinkedIn. Articles and video posts, you don't have to stick with just text-based posts. You can try to make it engaging by variety. You can also have an open to work banner. So a lot of people say that you should put an open to work banner on your LinkedIn profile, and some people say you shouldn't. But it doesn't matter because there is an option to say that you can let recruiters know that you're open to hiring, but you won't put that banner on your profile. So I'll show you that feature in a bit as well. Job alerts. So when you are applying for jobs, there's a jobs button that's actually in LinkedIn where you can actually search for keywords of jobs. You can also create job alerts for those, just as save job alert or save keyword and location, etc. And so feel free to use that feature. Feedback, this is very important when you're looking at recruiters. And let's say somebody actually contacted you and said, hey, we don't have a position for you. You say, okay, fine, no worries. But if you could just take a minute out of your time to let me know what you think about my LinkedIn profile, that would be great. So getting feedback on your profile is very important. And finally, speak to people. If you cannot speak to them through a personalized invite, perhaps connect with them, engage with their content, and ultimately try and meet them physically to try and make that connection stronger. There's a very quick example of a personalized invite. So instead of saying, for sake of time, I'll just run through the first one. Instead of saying, I'm looking for new work and I thought that you might have some opportunities, you can say, hey, I know that, so you've taken the time to read their profile. Look, I know that you're recruiting for this company. And then you be very specific. Do you have a role for marketing manager or business development manager? So this is how you kind of personalize that invite when you send it out to somebody. And then, of course, this is the part where you would either put open to work. So in your profile, there's a settings, edit preferences, job preferences button, where you can, fill out what you'd like to apply for. And then at the end, you have this option to say, do you want recruiters only to know that you're open to work or everybody? And so the decision is yours, whichever you choose. I personally just use the LinkedIn recruiter button. So before we move on to the next section, which is the recruiter side of things, which is the last section, I'll just take you through LinkedIn. So I want to show you the search feature. Okay. Right. So now let's say I want to or let's say somebody wants to get a job at Microsoft. So the first thing that the person might do is, hey, I want to search for this company called Microsoft. All right, so that's your search bar. And here you can sort, what you'd like to search for exactly. Let's say I want to search for all filters. I want to search for Microsoft, that perhaps, or the company or the page or the people that are in Canada, and perhaps people who are working at Microsoft. There are a lot more filters here. So you could actually filter by people, or you could filter by companies. And then you could say, okay, where would you like? So there's a lot of flexibility in the filters to try and narrow down what exactly you'd like to search for. And so if I'm looking for a company called Microsoft and I want to make sure that they're in, let's say, North America, or their website is catered towards the North American job market, for example. So that's that. And then I just click search, and then you can see. So you can kind of tailor not only what you're searching for, but who you're searching for, and by location, by company, etc. So let's say I didn't find many interesting results on the company page, but I know that I have a friend who works at Fortis, for example, or I want to work in this company called Fortis BC. And I want a particular role in Fortis BC. So let's say I want to work as a utilities manager, for example. I'll go to their website, and usually companies will have this, most of them. You can actually look at the People's tab, and you can search for the particular role. So, let's say utility manager. So if I'm interested in becoming a utility manager, it makes sense if I'm connected to utility managers, for example, so that I'm up to date with my kind of industrial network of what's happening in that area. And so I can actually add more filters on this. So I want utility managers in Fortis BC who are working in British Columbia, and they studied from, is there a UBC? Oh, it's not UBC, okay. Maybe University of Toronto. So there are 2 people there. Yeah, and that's it. And then your search results pop up. Now you can continue kind of optimizing your search results to find maybe a specific title or a job role that you'd like to apply for. Or you could alternatively search for recruiters and connect with them from a company's page. So let's say I want a recruiter who's recruiting or maybe living in British Columbia, Canada, and doesn't matter where they studied. But this is another way of searching for relevant people, and then first sending them a message, a personal invite to say, hey, I know you're a recruiter for this company. I really want to work as a utilities manager or XYZ, and I'm just trying to connect with you so I can stay in touch with opportunities. Send. That's as simple as that. So you try to use the search filters for finding relevant people and opportunities and titles to connect with. There's one more cool thing here. So if you go, usually many pages do have this. You can actually find a section called, what's it? In the About section, sometimes companies will have this button to say, maybe the role that you wanted to apply for is not open yet, but you really want to get into Fortis BC. So they have this I'm interested button, which basically lets recruiters know that you're interested in working for the company, even though there's no active role. And so you could just click that button to say I'm interested. Lastly, but not leastly, there is something called a Boolean search. So it's like you can use certain words to try and add or subtract stuff in your search results. So if, let's say, the search filters are not giving you, what you're looking for, and you'd like to be very specific with what you'd like to search for, you can use operators like and, or, not, etc., to try and customize that search itself. For sake of time, I have a resources section at the end with some links which will show you how to use that Boolean operator for your search operation. But the last part of this presentation is basically the recruiter side of LinkedIn. It's very important. How do recruiters actually search for candidates on LinkedIn? So there are 2 sides of this. First is the recruiter searching themselves, and then is the recruiter giving feedback on what or their impressions of a candidate when they open up their profile. And so there's a lot of material online. I think the entire presentation is probably going to be outdated in the next 2-3 months, because that's how quickly people are being, creative with their attempts at LinkedIn and finding out new ways about this. But there are some fundamental things that will not change, the basics that we've touched upon so far. And one of the fundamental things is recruiters can either search just like a normal person. You go and you search for a keyword like business development manager, and you get a list of people that have that title or that skill called business development manager, or it's in their headline that says business development manager. And then what they'll do is they'll click on the person's profile, and they don't have time to like read through, where you grew up and which degree you got, etc. So what they'll do is just Control F or find the keyword that they're looking for and see, does it appear in your profile? So make sure you have those keywords from your job description throughout your LinkedIn profile. The second thing they look at is, how do I contact a relevant person? Is it just through a message, or maybe there's an email given? So when you're filling out the sections, there is a contact more, this is kind of like a semi-section where you can fill out your contact details. And so it's better if you do fill out maybe just an email there. The third thing they could do is, there is a paid version, which is called the recruiter search part, or recruiter, I think LinkedIn recruiter search, which basically gives them a lot more features to try and filter candidates. But the one thing you need to know about it is, usually how to make your profile appear at the top of their search results is making sure that you're active. So if you've liked their company page and you're following that company and you're being very active about it, and you have a notification that says you're open to work in that role or that industry, most likely you'd be appearing up top in their search results. And so the recruiter's advice portion of this is, when they click on your profile and they search for keywords, obviously they'll be looking at the quick things that come to mind, which is the profile picture, the background, maybe your about section, just a few seconds, your headline. So make sure that you do have a very, I would say, an appealing profile, professional picture. You have grammar, vocab nailed down, a nice, funny maybe, or storytelling approach to your about section. Skills, you must have relevant skills, especially the 3 that you pin should be extremely relevant to your industry. And you have keywords from your job description filled out throughout and make sure that whatever titles you use for your sections or your subheadings or your descriptions are clear, so they don't have to hunt for or try to guess at what you're trying to say in each section. Secondly, if you're not active, a lot of things that people could assume is like, maybe the person's dead, maybe it's like he gave up on job search, or he found it and the LinkedIn profile's out of date. So make sure that if you are searching for this, even in the future, just have a like, comment, share here and there. And finally, there's a way to turn off. So when somebody clicks on your profile, they can actually see this one, people also viewed. Now, this section is kind of like your competition, right? Because if a recruiter opens your profile, and I'm a process engineer by degree, they would see, people who've clicked on my profile and then seen perhaps, people who are relevant in my field. It's up to you if you'd like to turn this on or off, but certain recruiters were saying if you don't want to show your competition, you could actually turn that setting off. You just go into settings, syncing options, and then turn that to no, viewers of this profile also viewed. And so that will prevent that coming from a second, but that's completely up to you. So in short, there are 3 main things you could do with LinkedIn. Firstly, don't replace it, complement it with your current job searches, or inshallah future job searches, wherever you are at your career journey. Make sure that you pick a nice template to model off of. Of course, to give due credit, maybe message them, it's like, I really liked your LinkedIn profile, and it's like, it's been a great source of inspiration, keep it up. But also tailor it, get that all-star status. Make sure that you're actively job hunting. You're using the search filters effectively. You're posting, you're being active, you're getting feedback on your profile. You're trying to make those conversations through the social platform, but also try and bring it into the physical sense. Try and set up a meeting, perhaps if you're in the same city. And finally, look at what the recruiters are seeing. So do you have keywords laid out in your profile? Is it appealing enough? what could you optimize that would make the recruiter's life easier? And yeah, so a lot of this information is kind of like what I saw when I was trying to apply for jobs, and really updated it in the past week. So that's kind of up to date, but it's an evolving thing. So there are a couple of links here. I can probably share them in the chat, or I think I'll might have to share this presentation later if requested. And then, you know, a lot of the resources online, don't underestimate them. You might find YouTube videos on recruiters just going through profiles, giving their feedback, and that's extremely valuable. So please use online resources, try and optimize that LinkedIn profile, so you can start, you know, inshallah, bettering your effort into getting a job.
Thank you so much, Josefa, for the very insightful information for the LinkedIn. So we have a couple of questions from the audience, and I would like to our all participants that they should directly ask their questions with Josefa. And please remember to raise your hands and turn on your video option if it's convenient to you to ask questions. So I guess Zed, I'm going to unmute you. Yeah, you can ask your question with Josefa.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask the question. My question is, I'm a graduate student right now. So let's suppose I am trying to create my LinkedIn profile from the scratch, from the very beginning. So my question is, how can I add my achievements of bachelor's and let's suppose my work experience? I've earned something and I have those photos. I want to post it on my newsfeed. What would be the best way to do it? Apart from, I would be filling out all the details in the profile section, that's for sure. But since you mentioned that I need to have my feed good as well. So what would be the best way to post past achievements with photos and everything? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, it's just a couple of ideas though. No right or wrong answer here, but I feel, let's say it's been 1 year since you graduated, right? And you're trying to make it kind of like a post where you put in the pictures, you tag the people who you worked with in your team and say, hey, look, this is what we did. It was a really fun time. And then put in a picture of your achievement. There's like, honor student here, the certification. And then once that's done, you can actually pin that as your featured tab, in your featured tab. So you could feature that post, and then that's permanently on your profile. That's one way to get past achievements into your profile as well as your feed.
Just a follow-up question there. So I am in my final month, final term of the graduate studies, but I want to add, let's suppose if I won a presentation, a certification and stuff like that, photos. So if I post anything, the date would be today's date. So what would be the best way to add past thing? Like, shall I have to add in the caption that I achieved this in my bachelor's, or can I change the date like 3 years ago or something in LinkedIn?
Yes, so actually in your profile section, maybe not so when you post something, you can't change that. The time of the post is what's recorded. You can mention it in your post perhaps, that this is from a while ago. But in your LinkedIn profile section itself, under licenses and certifications, for example, you can actually put in the date when it was awarded. So if you got a degree, you could just put it there as, okay, yeah, this is my certificate and this is the date that it was awarded.
Thank you so much. That helped my question.
Okay. Anyone have any questions here? Want to ask Zephyr? Or if someone doesn't want to be on the video session, they can write their questions in the chat box.
Maybe I can ask if you don't mind. Okay. So it's about the groups actually. So we do have our own groups, right? So joining groups, like how important it is joining the groups. And the second question, is there any limit like a person can join number of groups, right? So I'm like a member of SMA group. I'm a member of my alumni, right? I'm also a member of Friends Cafe Club of Canada LinkedIn group. So is there any limit on this one? I just want to make sure and understand this. Like, or if we can, if there is limit, can we somehow increase this limit so we can join maximum number of groups and interact with maximum number of people?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I think so. The first part of your question in terms of the value of groups. So yeah, if you're interested in a particular hobby or your own career and you find groups that are related to that, it's an excellent source of networking because then you don't really need to send connection invites to all those people. If they're all part of that group and you get into that group, you have direct access to all of those people. In terms of group limit or joining a number of groups, as far as I'm aware, there's no certain limit, but what groups or group admins can do is they'll ask you to fill out, certain information pending your approval into that group. So for example, why are you interested in this group? Are you going to make sure that you adhere to the group rules, etc.? And so that just might be kind of like a barrier to get in. But I'm not sure if there is any certain limit to the number of groups you can join.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks. I request all like interact, like this is a session where you can ask any questions if you do have, and especially if you're looking for a job, you're a student or professional looking for a job, this is the time to ask, like, because you can ask any questions regarding your profile and your, how you can share, because this is the chance, you're not going to get this chance again. So please ask questions. Don't be shy here. I mean, this session will end, will be ended soon. So
yeah, one thing, yeah, thanks. I think somebody shared the link as well for YouTube videos. But one thing I would say is that if you are a student right now and you're graduating, let's say next year, the best time to search for a job is a few months in advance, right? And so the same goes with LinkedIn and networking. If you start becoming active now, by the time you graduate, you probably have a lot of connections versus if you're trying to search for a job later on. And what I would recommend is a lot of people on LinkedIn, out of the maybe 100 invites you send, you might have 80 acceptances. And then from the 80, if you get, message somebody to say, hey, I would like to have a chat with you about this, maybe one person out of the 80 would respond. But don't be discouraged with that response rate. It doesn't matter with, like, you're trying your best and targeting people who are relevant to your field, your industry. So as long as you reach that point, then it's just a matter of time for results to come, inshallah.
Okay, we have MFK. Yeah, you can ask and then Zed.
Hi, Assalamu
Assalam.
I just want to ask how many number of endorsement you need on your skill minimum.
That's a
I
good
heard
question.
someone mentioning me like each skill needs to have at least number of 10 endorsement to look your profile really great. But getting 10 endorsement is like, I don't know if it's
Yeah, that's tricky. So so this is what I've heard, two opinions. One is a major opinion where people say it doesn't matter if people have endorsed you or not, as long as you have, let's say, verifiable evidence that you have that skill. So maybe you've got certifications in that area or that competency and under your license and certifications, or you got a recommendation by somebody who vouches for your skills there. That's one opinion that I've heard from recruiters. But the second is, if you really are interested in getting that, these many people endorsed, this person's highly skilled, but I would suggest to start off with friends. It's very easy to endorse them and say, hey, can you endorse me back? And since you know each other, you're just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Let me endorse you for that skill that I know you have.
so there's no particular number you need just
I mean, it depends. Again, it's a recruiter at the other side of the screen, so it's very subjective based on the recruiter's preferences. But the most, from what I understood from all of this search and speaking to, being on the recruiter side for a while, for grad students specifically, personally, we didn't really look at that. Again, it's subjective, but if you really want to, you could start with your friends.
all right. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Zed?
My question is regarding experience section. Yeah. So I've seen a couple of profiles where people list all the responsibilities of a particular job, while on the other hand, some people don't write all the responsibilities, but they just write the skills, like for example, AutoCAD or something like that. They don't write all the job responsibilities. So my question is, what would be the best way for me? Shall I like write all the responsibilities, or shall I just list the skills that I achieved from that job experience? Thank you.
Okay, so I guess the rule of thumb when you're filling out your experience section is it has to be clean, which means you try to keep it as short as possible, but that doesn't mean that you can't put in. So if you just list out all your skills and responsibilities, that's gonna be just the job description that you're copy pasting, right? So a smarter way to do that would be, perhaps in my opinion, would be you list down your key responsibilities and how you impacted them. So if you're, let's say, a student in, like, I don't know, maybe mechanical engineering, and you've done robotic design, you want to get into design, for example. So you could say, okay, this is my experience, or this is I worked an internship here, and so a quick one-liner about the company itself. It's a startup that it works in Vancouver, for example. Second line, leave a bit of space, make it kind of look nice, just like leave blank spaces between. And then you could say, okay, duties, main responsibility was this, and then comes the CV part. Put an action verb. I led a team of 3+ to get this design through. And then in the section, you can actually upload a picture. So if you made some prototype or something, you can actually upload that, and then that kind of adds more credibility to what you did. In terms of experienced professionals, maybe a picture wouldn't be a good idea, but there you could actually put in the impact that you had on that particular task. And then maybe your top 3, that you're most proud of. If it's not a replicate of your CV, which it shouldn't be, you'll most likely find it to be a much more concise version of your skills in LinkedIn experience. Sorry.
Okay, Imran Saman. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for the session. It was very, very informative and very useful. I would like to ask you something, for example, I have an experience in the finance field, but I'm working in the logistics.
Mm-hmm.
So right now in the LinkedIn, I would keep up my present job profile, which is the logistics division, and yet if I'm looking for the finance field, so uh, would I be changing the title of the profile, or just keep it instant and just keep on looking for the finance job also?
So that's tricky, because if you do apply for a certain role, recruiters would ideally look at your LinkedIn profile and say that this person versus the job description seems to be a disconnect. And alternatively, if you were to put an open to work position for finance, and you don't have the keywords in your profile, you might not appear as high up as, let's say, somebody else who's in the finance field and doing all of that and has the experience when a recruiter searches for that keyword. So both ways, I feel that your profile might not be visible. So what I would recommend is, if you are moving towards there, you can do a free online certification on it. Change maybe in your headline, you could say aspiring financial person, or including whatever logistics experience that you have, and get some certifications in and start posting about that content. Try to add a little bit of whatever finance as your interest or your hobby section, or in your LinkedIn profile with those keywords. So at least you start becoming visible to people who are in that field, and you start getting some verifiable skills, which is like a certification, free from LinkedIn Learning. You can do a couple of finance. So that way, when you apply for a job, or you're moving into that just a transition, when people look at your profile, it's like, oh, this person might actually be a bit relevant to what we're looking for.
So basically, once I input my resume, my experience, and my last work, my present job, that would be logistics.
Yes.
But yet my experience also includes finance in it, because all my previous jobs were related to finance, and the last job was related to logistics.
So I misunderstood then. So in that case, you can put in the finance part of it as well, right, in your section, and make sure that your skills represent both aspects, your logistical experience as well as your finance experience in your skill section. So you're listing that out. And so yeah, that's perfectly fine. Even in your headline, you could have a catchy headline that captures what you do specifically to you. I wouldn't know what that looks like because it's very specific. But it could be something like you know, um, financial logistics or something. Like you can be
Okay.
creative on how to combine it, but yeah, make sure that it's stamped in your profile. The keywords from the job description of what you potentially would like to apply for and what you're currently doing.
And can I add something here, right? So answer to your question that people have diversified nature of experience. Like, so it's not necessary like everyone is a subject matter expert. So like
Right.
in my case, I'm working as a project manager, but I'm used to work as a mechanical engineer as well. So mechanical engineer is also, is a skill set, right? I do have that one as well. And I do have a project management skill set as well. So those are two attributes that I can, say, in the LinkedIn. So I guess there is nothing harm to mention multiple skill set or attributes you have, right? So that's important, especially, you have more multiple skill sets, so you can say more, right? More LinkedIn, recruiters can contact you, right? Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I do actually.
No, agreed, absolutely. And again, so I am just a person who did this research, and like what I would suggest is look at profiles of people that are maybe in a similar boat, or perhaps somebody where you'd like to get to. Look at how they phrased it and their profile, and maybe you might find something interesting that you could adapt as well.
Yes, MFK.
Yep, MFK.
Hi. Is it advisable to upload CV on your profile or no? No,
It's
it's not.
subjective. No, it's subjective. So if you feel like, usually the LinkedIn portfolio is a soft version of your CV, but in a much more, I would say, appealing manner. So if you upload the CV as well, sure, recruiters typically don't spend a lot of time looking at candidates in their initial vetting process, right? So they'll just click through the profile, search for the keywords, look at a little bit here and there. Once they're at a stage where they really need to finalize candidates, that's where they may look at your LinkedIn a little bit more in depth. If you feel that your CV is really well done and something that might really give you a might make you stand out from the crowd, then sure, feel free to upload it. Again, it's subjective.
And again, I would like to add here something. I do have a totally different set of opinion here, and sorry for that, but I just want to share my experience. And I would say don't do that actually. In fact, LinkedIn is not your resume sharing tool actually. LinkedIn
Right.
is where you showcase, and the reason being is that because you never know, like in future, in 2 years or 3 years down the road, you'll be looking for a job entirely different. You need to tailor your resume. You can tailor your resume if it is in your possession, but if it is in marketplace, right? What you are doing right now here, you are going into the shop, putting your resume in front of thousands of people that this is what I've done. And that would be very difficult. You go back and then tailor it, and certainly in job market, you need to tailor all the time your resume based on the requirement. I'm not saying you need to tell a lie, but at least you have some opportunity, flexibility. You can tailor your resume, right? So that's why I say that don't use sharing your, don't share your resume and your LinkedIn profile.
Right.
And that's what he has mentioned, Uzafa, that's totally right, that you can use keywords and your key skill sets, and that's all, I guess. And the companies you did work for, right? Those kind of things, right? But I've seen like multiple times LinkedIn profiles where people have 15 bullets against each, I don't know. Nobody has time these days to read all this, right? So
Okay, we have Wazara.
Thank you.
Yep, you can go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. I have a question about the references. What kind of references we should mention? Either these should be the relevant to our career. Maybe if I am a mechanical engineer, so the reference should be relevant to the persons who are mechanical engineers, are the relevant jobs, or they can be either. And the second, in addition to that, if I am from Pakistan, so I can mention a reference from the Pakistan, or the reference should be local.
I see. So one thing to show is basically, let me share my screen. So when I mentioned references, it is particularly the recommendation section. So if I go to, let me go to my profile. At the end, you have a section called recommendations. And this is kind of like a reference. And what you can do is you can request people. So let's say, you've worked with a couple of people in Pakistan and maybe they're your colleagues or managers. I don't know. I would probably just go to their profile or message them and say, look, I would like, you can request a recommendation from them by clicking on, so if you access their profile, you can click on more and request a recommendation. What this would do is it would send a message to say, hey, this person's asking you to recommend them. So you can either speak to them on the phone to say, look, I would like a recommendation. Can you just go to my profile, add a recommendation for me? Or you can go to their profile and click this button, request a recommendation. And so what this will do is, honestly, the more the recommendations, the better, whether it's local or back home, because they speak to your skill set. Your skill set can apply back home and here. Sure, there might be certifications that you might need or relevant experience, but the fundamental idea of references is to vouch for your skill. And so feel free to ask from, I would say your colleagues and your managers, people who are working with you, maybe even people who you're supervising, for example, and get those recommendations into your LinkedIn profile by either clicking on request a recommendation, or there's an option if somebody goes into their, if somebody accesses your LinkedIn profile online, they can click on more and they can click on recommend. So I can recommend you for something, for example, and it would appear as a written recommendation on your profile. And then even then, it's your choice if you want to make it visible to the people. So let's say somebody gave you a recommendation, but you're not really happy with it. You can actually turn that off and it won't appear in your profile. And this is how the recommendation would appear. It's just the person's name and then they would talk about you, for example.
Right. So basically recommendations are working as a reference for you.
Yes, exactly. But it may not replace it. So maybe when you apply for a job, they may still ask, hey, we need a reference letter or reference. But this, at least in your profile, when people are initially scanning for candidates and they see somebody who has 3 or 4 recommendations from managers, and as a mechanical engineer, they're saying that you're really good, it might boost your chances to going into that final candidate selection.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to end our session. So before just closing, thank you everyone for joining this session. Thank you, Josefa. Thank you, Khurram, and thank you so much, Zafar Yusuf, who actually made it possible technically that we can view it in Zoom and with the YouTube channel live. If you guys have any questions, you can ask in the closed WhatsApp group. That WhatsApp group will be open, still will remain open in next to 48 hours or 24 hours. So if you have any questions with our trainer, Josefa, you can post your question in our closed WhatsApp group. Khurram and Josefa, if you have any last words with our audience.
Jazakallah khair.